everybody, and welcome to TLC Live. I'm Andrea Gomez.
And I'm Orlando Sanchez.
Hello, everybody. Well, today we have a special day talking about graduation. It's important because my kids are graduating on Saturday. That's important. But the most important thing is that they became 18 years old last month, and this week I got their voting registration cards. So, meaning that they're eligible to vote this year in November, but also for the first time next year in 2024 presidential elections. So, along with them, thousands of kids or young adults, they become 18 this month or the previous months, and they're graduating this month. Not only 18 years old, high school, but also college students are graduating. So for the first time, thousands of young adults are going to be able or eligible to vote this year and the next year in 2024 presidential elections. So that's why we're talking today about Gen Z or Generation Z.
What are they going to do when they run out of Z? I mean, to go back to, it'll be Generation A.
I don't know, but that's why we have today. we have today so far two special guests. We're waiting for another one, but we have a professor for University of St. Thomas. He is Chris Wolfe, and also we have our dear friend Joel Castro, that he is a city council member in Alvin, Texas, but also he is a Generation Z, and he was in office when he was 18. So, and I was talking to Professor Wolfe yesterday, and he told me, well, I'm teaching many Generation Z in my class. So that's why we're inviting them to talk about this topic, because recently it was research of Pew Research Center, that they were saying that Generation Z is going to be the most diversity community, but also they're going to define the elections in a couple of years, or in the next 10 years.
There's big demographic
The
changes
big
in America.
demographic, exactly. So that's why it's important this month. It's timing. Many kids are graduating. Also, my kids are graduating. They go to college. And they are very excited to vote for the first time this year and, of course, participating in next year. So let's start it with our friend Joel Castro, that he is in office since he was 18 years old, Generation Z, and talking about when you were, many kids, they're 18, they're not thinking about running for office. Or sometimes they're hardly thinking about just participating and go to vote. So tell us about, your Generation Z, and how did you see the kids are graduating this year and also graduating in college? Oh, we cannot hear you. Hold on. We have technical problems. Okay, so let's go with the Professor Wolfe.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's good to be on with y'all. And yeah, uh, I'm not part of Generation Z myself, but I do teach these guys Generation Z, and it's very interesting for me to watch this and to talk with you guys today about it, because I saw that in the last midterm election, 2022, the number of the 18-year-olds eligible to vote in Texas, 75% did not actually vote. Only 25% actually voted when they had the opportunity. So I do think that this is an opportunity for conservatives to try to get these voters to understand their principles and to vote for them. And it's an opportunity because they just didn't vote last time. They might be Some people think they might be a little bit disaffected. It was the first election for them, after COVID. The turnout apparently for in 2018 before COVID for 18-year-olds was some of the highest in Texas, for that age range. So I think it's a very interesting question that we're addressing today.
Professor, we're having a little bit of technical issues. We can see your image, but we cannot really see you talking. It's like a freeze. I don't know if you mind to disconnect and connect again.
I will. I will. Yeah.
All right.
So I can get
Thank
that
you.
frown off
Thank you.
of
I'm
my screen.
sorry.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay. I think we have Joe now.
I'm back. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Good. Great.
Perfect. Good.
Okay. So so tell us what is your thoughts about this?
Yeah. So first of all, you're right, totally right about Generation Z. How there's a lot of people 18 who are not wanting to run for office, uh, but we're seeing right now specifically that there's a lot of people in this generation, Generation Z, whether it's social media and just all over the internet, that they're starting to use their voice. They're tired of being censored on social media. They're tired of being indoctrinated in universities and in public schools. And people now in this generation are wanting to get involved. There's an organization that I work with, Run Gen Z, and like our goal is to train, equip, and mentor conservative trailblazers all across this nation to run for office and win. And almost every single race we've been involved with, they have won. So we have helped mentored and young now elected officials that are Generation Z all across this country, whether it's state rep, city council, school board, county offices. Uh, there's a yearning for a fresh, new perspective, conservative perspective, and that still represent our timeless conservative values. But it is our time for the young conservatives and Generation Z to get involved, because right now there's a lot of issues that need to be had. And I think that's one thing about young people, is that we're always willing to learn, and we're always willing to I guess more or less rock the boat, right? And so we're not afraid to stand up to the status quo, not afraid to try something new. Uh, but one thing that we are willing to do all the time is fight for what we believe in, and we're seeing that on both sides of the aisle, whether it's the conservatives or whether it's the liberals. We're really seeing an influx of the Gen Zs starting to get more involved in politics and
What
using their voice.
What do you make of the left using, through various nonprofits, which they're good at,
Yeah.
sort of indoctrinating and infiltrating not only higher ed but public education systems? For example, I just happened to get a social media post that was shared with me from Montana, in a town called Livingston, Montana, and they've organized a bunch of young people to protest fossil fuels. I'm sure they're all going to drive there to the debate in their automobiles with their parents. But do you see the conservative side, the logical side, the reasonable side, making those sorts of efforts to reach your generation?
Yeah. So, Leonard, you actually brought up a point that I think it's very difficult for us to be able to combat, because you're right. The indoctrination, the liberal agenda is encroaching in academia, and I will actually venture off to say that it's encroaching in a lot of institutions. We have academia. We have. I think it's happening on social media. I think it's happening in regular media. It's happening in Hollywood, and so in all aspects, right? And even some levels of government, where this, right now with Biden in office, we've seen this influx of this liberal agenda just trying to poison the youth. Now, how they go about that is using feelings, right? And you know, there's a saying that facts don't care about your feelings, right? But a lot of younger people, that's what they're in tune. They're in tune to their feelings. They're very emotional in Gen Z. So what we have to do as conservatives is be able to find that happy medium of using facts, but using that, having compassionate side, but also being able to talk about how amazing the American dream really is, and highlight the facts that the agenda that they're believing in right now is ruining the American dream. And it's our job to reignite that American dream so other generations can be able to reap the benefits of what we're able to fix. So the to answer your question is there conservatives doing that right now? Is there conservative organizations doing that right now? Yes, I think there's a lot of people. After the past few elections, conservatives, the party has realized that we have to do a lot of work, right? And if we want to win the war, we got to get in the battlefield. We got to get in place that we've never been seen before. We have to be able to preach the conservative gospel to places and people who anyone willing to be able to hear us. And so what we have to do is be innovative and figure out how we can be able to reach these people without losing our principles, without being able to cave into some of our ideology. We have to be firm in our beliefs, and we have to be able to mix those facts with a little bit of compassion, a little bit of emotion in it.
Do you see an eagerness in your generation to participate in politics, or is it just going to be like in the past where young people just kind of, whatever?
I think there's an eagerness for sure. And the main reason right now is it's because of social media. I mean, we get news now within 5 seconds. When we see it on Twitter, when we see it on Instagram, when we see it on Snapchat, those are live things that maybe in other generations. Orlando, in your generation, it probably took a little bit longer to get news real time, right? And so
they were called telegrams.
Yeah, exactly. You had a pigeon come bring you a piece of paper,
right?
And you had the Pony Express too, but no, but in reality, I think with the accessibility of information at our fingertips, it really unleashes a lot of barriers that were had before, where we're able to have a lot of information. Now the problem is censorship, right? What kind of information is being put out there? Is it actual factual information, or are we being censored just because of our beliefs, right? Now censorship is a huge issue all across this nation, and so what we have to do is be able to combat that as well. But I definitely believe that there's a lot more younger people wanting to get involved. I mean, we're seeing it on they're using their voices on Twitter, right? That's a big one. But we have to be able to translate those tweets, those social media posts into votes, right? There's a lot of conservatives that are speaking up now because they're sick and tired of whether it's censorship or a plethora of stuff in our generation. We have to be able to turn those tweets, those social media posts, into door knockers, into phone callers, into votes.
Let me ask you a question real quick, and I think the professor's back, correct?
I think we have the
so
professor
we'll bring
back,
the professor back in. Real quick, Joel. So now the media, whatever, mainstream media, there's so much competition for information, and you're right. Most of it is fake. Yeah. Most of it is generated by Chinese, by Russians, by, some guy in his underwear down in the basement, and what's happening is that the old traditional trusted news sources are having to compete with that. So they're actually running, they're becoming scandal sheets, right? Running sensational stories rather than in-depth investigative reporting and just laying it out for the public, right? So you have, in my city, you have the Houston Chronicle. I mean, the New York Times is still, it's widely cited, but, obviously not respected among conservatives. And then you have the news, which you have, the conservative channels, which get in trouble occasionally. Then you have MSNBC and CBS, where with Dan Rather lying about former Governor George W. Bush and candidate for President George W. Bush, which caused him to get fired. Then the NBC anchor got fired for lying, and it's just a disaster. You don't know who to believe nowadays. But we're so subject to manipulation. Do you see that, and how does your generation weed through all that?
They don't. I don't think we are. I think that's a void that we're missing as conservatives, right? Because it's really hard to combat that, because there's all levels of institutions are against us. We have the fake news media, we have academia. When they're going to class, they're still getting that same indoctrination message. When they look at their favorite celebrity, they're seeing that. When they look at TikTok that is owned by communist China, they're seeing again this indoctrination that's happening, this liberal toxic agenda, And then when they look to our leaders, when they look, to, or I guess not the best leader, but still, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, right? And so, it's crazy that people think that they're doing a good job. That people in my generation think that they're doing a really good job. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and she said, "Oh, I love everything Joe Biden is doing." Like, you cannot actually think that Joe Biden is doing a good job, no matter which party you're a part of,
Yeah.
right? America deserves better than that.
Let me bring the professor in. I have a quick question I
Yeah.
want to ask you, Professor. Joel just mentioned TikTok, which is probably among the social media platforms, probably the most favored by young people and even getting broader use. But as we found out in the 2016 time frame and then the 2020 election, when Cambridge Analytica was brought in, and of course, ultimately they filed bankruptcy and went out of business and were criminally indicted in the UK. They were mining all of the data from Facebook, unbeknownst to us, the social media users. But this is a concern because we've seen this happen. I truly believe there's a danger that TikTok, by the time this young generation grows up, will have 50, 60, maybe 70,000 data points on every new voter that's coming. And as you know, they use that big data along with artificial intelligence to craft messages that can sway elections worldwide. I mean, this is, Cambridge Analytica did a great job of it before they went out of business. Is that a concern for you?
It is a concern. I mean, and it's totally legal, and that they, in the way they're doing it. And so you got to really think about, what platforms am I getting onto if you're a young conservative? I would encourage young people to get into watching long form podcasts, shows like this, rather than being on TikTok. Because with the long form podcast, you can actually listen to not just a quick jump in and tell you something kind of appeal, but you can listen to a person's full statement on a thing. And things like Substack would be better too if you're a conservative young person these days, to try to do the sorting out that Joel was just talking about. I mean, Joel, so much good advice there. I think you've got your head on straight about this, and of course, it's difficult for all of us to try and sort through this. But I think you're right, also, Joel, that young people, my experience with them, and having been one myself, of course, appeals to justice are always connect with young people, and so we got to figure out how to do exactly what Joel just said, is make our appeals to justice. And I think about the pro-life movement right now. We need to articulate our arguments about the injustice of abortion better, not give up or compromise on it. I think we need to articulate it better. And, and so with the problem that you just mentioned, Orlando, about them getting our data, is that it gets into the issue of the door knocking that Joel was talking about before. With that data, they can do micro targeting and go not to a broad audience. They'll go directly to the people who might vote for them. They don't want to knock on everybody's door. They're going to knock on specifically the people who are going to vote for them, and that's going to help them win the election if we don't do something about it.
Professor, historically, though, elections are about putting out information, whether it's true or false. I mean, this idea of false information is nothing new in campaigns. I mean, I think it goes back to the founding of the republic, right? I mean, you had newspapers that were on, one side or the other, and it's just now it's been digitized. Now they have more access and more. I guess, as you correctly pointed out, they can micro-target now. But is there really any difference? Is there a bigger threat?
Well,
I mean, I'm
just
reminded of that
remember
commercial that, remember in the 60s when there was always a thought of nuclear war, you remember the famous commercial, the daisy petals, 10,
Sure.
9, 8, and then the massive nuclear explosion. I mean, that's considered,
Goldwater is an extremist, right?
right.
Yeah, I mean, so this is politics is a little bit like war in terms of these tactics, and so we can see an escalation perhaps in the type of weapons used and tactics used. But it's always the same principles though in terms of
Right.
yes, uh, try to make your opponent look like an extremist, an idiot, and and uh, and try to make yourself look good. And but we have so many facts and so many persuasive arguments on the conservative side. It's always been a matter and a problem of getting them out there, and so it's a problem of us being censored. That's part of censorship, and then it's also a matter of compelling speech, also forcing people to say things that aren't really true, but peer pressuring them into saying these things. And
You, you,
so we see both at work in
yeah.
social media. I'm encouraged by Musk a little bit by freeing up Twitter a little bit, maybe in this next election.
Yeah,
I
it's
hope
going to be
that continues.
interesting to see what happens. But what's fundamentally interesting to me is that if you look at all these, and if you listen to Zuckerberg when he testified before Congress, the whole idea, all these guys say that, the digital platforms were meant to connect the world, bring us together. When in fact, it's actually had the opposite effect. I think we're more polarized. Everybody agrees worldwide. I mean, we're not just talking about the United States, the UK, the Germans, the Spanish, the Italians, the Americans, Brazil, Mexico. We're all more divided. Yet, when you look at polls, at least in the United States, Americans want compromise in politics, and we're not getting that. So, where are we going?
One of my students said this, and I think she was right. She said she was doing a paper on the community standards for social media, and she said, yeah, that it's a big lie in that they say that the standards they have in terms of censorship and everything else on these social media are what you, the people out there using the platform, what your community standards are. But what she said was that's not really true. It's actually the community standards of Silicon Valley,
Correct.
which are being applied to everybody else, and it's very tribalizing. It's very divisive. And you're right, and so we have to be aware of that. And so, talk to real people in real life. That's always a good thing to try to get out of the tribalism.
Dr. Wolf, I wanted you give us a recap of what you were saying at the beginning of the program that we couldn't really see you or we were having technical issues. So give us the statistics of the generation, the 18 years old, the population that become 18 years old last year, and what was their participation?
Yeah, so in the 2022 election, I saw a statistic that said that 75% of those eligible to vote were 18 did not in Texas. In Texas, that is. And but in 2018, that first Beto Cruz election, it was very high turnout for 18-year-olds, and so there is a lot of excitement, but I'm not sure just right now in the immediate aftermath of COVID, they 18-year-olds seem to be a little bit disaffected from voting, or midterms they're never that as motivated. Nobody is as motivated to vote as in the big presidential elections. So I think in this big presidential election, we will really see exactly where Generation Z is at in terms of their political views a lot better, because we didn't get to see them really do it in 2022. Only 25%.
Yeah, so we're gonna have two big demographics that they're gonna decide the elections, not only well in the November, but also next year in 2024, and it's gonna be Latinos and it's going to be also Generation Z. Um, I think it's a big disconnection, and the politicians and the media are trying to get them the message, and I think they haven't get there yet. They don't know how to pursue the Latinos, because it's when we talk about Latinos, it's not just Mexicans, it's not just Central Americans, it's a very diversity community. But also now Generation Z, it's saying the research that is going to be, and is right now is one of the most diversity population, that is not only Latinos but is from everywhere in the world. So how do you guys see these, and how do you guys see that Generation Z and also Latinos are going to consume the message? I'm not seeing many people watching TV anymore, other than us, the old people, but the Generation Z are not consuming the message that way. So how did you guys see it? Let's start with Joe, and then we go with you, Doctor.
Andrea, you're exactly right. I don't think I've watched one TV show in probably 4 years. I don't watch TV at all. Don't really watch movies. Um, and I would venture out to say there's probably a lot of people in my generation that also do not watch TV, and so I think the message will be received, right? Um, when it's at their fingertips, when it's on their phones, when they're getting it every 30 seconds, right? But I think what's more important is that we have conversations with these people. We have constructive dialogue, and that we um, I know that there's a lot of times, especially with me being in politics, like when I ran for office, I'm pretty convicted in a lot of my in a lot of my opinions. Margaret Thatcher says you want to be a convicted politician, not a consensus politician, and so there's been times where people were maybe got a little passionate. We had a very passionate discussion, and people get very excited. And a lot of it is because maybe there's just a misunderstanding. And so what we have to be able to realize is that it's a lot easier to catch a bee with honey than it is with vinegar, right? And so realize that these people, most of the time don't really come out a message of hate. At least the people that the everyday common voter, right? Now maybe the people at the top, that's a different story, but the people at the bottom are extremely miseducated, right? And so what we have to do is figure out where they're at and be able to be calm and give them a message and stay true to our convictions and have a constructive dialogue of why we believe is what is right. You know, I was talking to someone a long time ago in Illinois, actually last summer. He was a young guy who was running for state rep, and one of the things he told me, he says, Joel, we can do everything we can in the legislature to cut taxes. We can do everything we can to provide actual tax relief, to improve healthcare, to improve insurance. But how do we unindoctrinate a child, right? How do we unindoctrinate the millions of people in our generation who have been succumbed by this liberal agenda for years? And we do that by having frank conversations. We do that with being not being afraid to challenge, right? Not being afraid to be able to maybe be a little uncomfortable. It is so imperative that we have these conversations with this generation, or else you know we may not even be able to come back from that, because the liberals have done a very good job of capturing this generation and being able to put their toxic agenda on us.
Professor.
Yeah, Andrea, it's a good question, and well, I think what Joel says makes a lot of sense. And they had this writer's strike in Hollywood recently, and I said, "That's okay. I don't care. I'm not watching anything on TV really anyway, other than sports." So, um, you know, there's a lot of that that mainstream, that's not really an option. I mentioned before, I think podcasts are a good way to connect with people, to educate. You know, one way to get to throw off the indoctrination is education. Educate ourselves more, and then just kind of share that with people, um, as opposed to, you know, use the facts to kind of like combat them. Just say, well, did you know this? Did you know this? And I mean, so the truth can be a common good that we can share with people, and that's a good way to appeal to people of every group. Doesn't matter if they're white, black, Latino. We got to have the respect that, you know, they can learn about these things too, make their judgment, and we have the strength. We have the confidence in our arguments, actually, that if they hear them, uh, they're gonna buy into it too. No matter who they are, even if they have a vested interest, perhaps in something, uh, they can hopefully see through what the truth is on this stuff. And so that's what we have to do, I think.
So here is another challenge that I see. Joel are saying, I haven't watched one single show in the last 4 years. I'm only consuming everything digital. And I mean, I'm seeing with my kids, they're 18 and they have TV in their rooms, never turn on. I mean, it's useless. And they only turn the TV sometimes when I really obligate them to watch Netflix with me. But other than that, even if they want to watch Netflix, they're watching on the phone. So the biggest challenge here, and you say something very important, Professor, is like podcasts are very important to send a message. Because now we have Instagram, Facebook, that they're left, and they're liberals. So they're like really putting an obstacle on the conservatives. So whoever is consuming this message, and any generation that is consuming this message is only hearing one side, the side that is allowed. So that's another biggest challenge that Generation Z is having, and not only Generation Z, but whoever want to target Generation Z is having. And podcasts, I mean, yes, podcast is a very good tool, but I mean, these kids are not all the time in podcasts. Most of the time, they're on TikTok and Instagram, and they're not Facebook, because Facebook is for other generation, but it's just TikTok and Instagram. So how do they're gonna get the message? Who's gonna really deliver the message, and how is gonna be, or what is gonna be the strategy? Because so far, I don't think it's been a really effective strategy to get to this generation, because it's a disconnection. It's like they don't know how. They don't even know how to target this generation. It's really difficult. And I don't know, I mean, Joel, you are that generation. Probably you know better how to target your own generation, but still, it's a challenge. So what is your
Uh,
thoughts, Joel?
I'll start off. It is an immense amount of challenge to be able to reach this generation, no doubt. And I said it before, and it goes back to everything just being against us. But yeah, I believe I'm going to venture out to assume that we're all people of faith in this podcast. So at the end of the day, that we know that our values are not only the facts, right? We know that it's what's right for America, but we also know that it's godly values, right? And so we know that even though everything worldly and it's against us and the institutions, at the end of the day, we know that we have God behind us. So how do we be able to relay that message, right? Um, we have to be able to. Uh, I think there's a lot of accessibility to data, right? When it comes to voter data, you can pull out people's their voter registration, their address, but you can also pull out their cell phones, get in touch with their cell phones. And there's a lot of organizations right now at the grassroots level that are reaching out to people that are are newly registered voters and also newly Texans, and being able to tell them a little bit of what Texas values, what conservative values really are, right? Because conservative values, Texas values, work. It's the reason why this country is so great. So, well, I think what we really have to do is just be innovative in a lot of ways. We have to be able to find people um, that are able to relay that message, that are maybe can be better in tune with the generation, be able to be more understanding, but also to be able to, you know, I hate identity politics as much as anybody else. I really don't like it. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of people in this generation when they see someone that is, the typical, you know, uh, typical, standard of a politician, right? Someone who's old, gray hair, and drawing Social Security, right? They're not really going to listen to that because it's kind of hard to be able to
Yeah,
level with them when it's
yeah.
someone that is young. So what we can do is find these young trailblazers in these communities that have a lot of connections and really be able to empower them, train them to be able to relay their message, to be able to have the conviction and the audacity to be able to go out in these communities and be able to combat a lot of this narrative, because you talk to one person, right, and give them the tools to be able to be that trailblazer in their community and with their friends, then that person will be able to talk to 10 more people, and then and then it spreads out. So there's a lot of things we can do, but I think that's a pretty good start, how we combat that. And just never stop beating the drum of conservative values and the principles that we have, and never be afraid, no matter where you're at, to share that message.
Professor, what is your own experience because you're teaching this generation?
Yeah, so Joel is right in so many ways right there. First off, yes, that I'm also a person of faith, that is hopeful. Um, but second of all, that yeah, so that yeah, I don't think I can ever get on TikTok and do these things. It's got to be people like Joel and younger who are conservatives, and we've got to encourage them on those platforms to do it. Because you're right, Andrea, that we can only do so much through the mediums that we older people are used to, the podcasts and in my case, like writing things, reading books. That's being a professor, that's my sphere, but the sphere of being on TikTok, it seems like it is with the younger people, and we need to be in the world but not of the world, and part of being in the world will be being on TikTok too, and some of these other platforms that I wish that they weren't on them, but I know that they're going to be on them. So, okay, do some good things on there.
What is the biggest challenge that you've been seeing in your own class, teaching the Generation Z, and dealing with these changes that every day we see a different thing and a new thing and an innovation of this, and I mean it's hard to keep up.
The students, um, the biggest challenge is for me educating them, and for them becoming educated, is that they need to show up in person to class as opposed to just kind of like not kind of being in the class on Zoom and not really being in the class. The ones who came in person did way better, and they learned so much more, and they really got it in my American government classes. The ones who were kind of in and out, that was a challenge for them, and some of them also I caught them sometimes using things like Chat GPT to try and write things. Well, I mean, I was able to catch them to do that. So there's so many different ways that younger people could try to do shortcuts using some of this
Uh-huh.
technology, but it's not really a shortcut in terms of if it's preventing you from really learning. That's the whole point here. You kind of cheat yourself. And
I was gonna
so
touch the artificial intelligence, yeah. I mean, in the program, because that's it's been on the news yesterday and today. The CEO has been telling the government, please help me to regulate this, because this is I mean, this is a really good tool, but also can damage, and it can be dangerous. So when you're saying like the biggest challenge is to have your students in person, this happened after COVID, I imagine, before everybody has to show up.
We knew about it last semester, and we were seeing. I saw it in my classroom for the first time last semester. A student tried to answer a question using it in class, and I know constitutional law better than the Chat GPT still. And I was able to. I said, "Okay, let me tell you about that case." And the Chat GPT doesn't know about the case. It just knew. It, so the problem is that I think with Chat GPT, some people are as the new Wikipedia, the new kind of authority on things. Oh, this is Chat GPT, the supercomputer. It takes all these different opinions off the internet. It must know more than the professor or anybody. And so it becomes the new common opinion, the new authority, when it's not necessarily a good authority, but some people are starting to see it like that. And so uh, I've tried to, in my classes, show that I still know more than the computer, but maybe I won't. Maybe it will know more than me. I don't know. But even if it does know more than me at the end of the day, um, we have to actually, in order to become educated or learn more, you can't just rely on the AI to replace that for you. Uh, it might help you sometimes. You might lean into it in some ways, but um, like a muscle, the brain is a muscle. You got to work out
Yeah.
using it.
You guys think that it's a threat of this Generation Z and the upcoming generations? I don't know what letter they're gonna put. As Orlando said, I mean, it's Generation Z now. What are they gonna do? Alpha, Omega, or what is they gonna
Yeah,
do?
I saw alpha. I
Yeah,
saw
exactly.
alphas.
That's what I thought. So you think it's a threat that this generation and the upcoming generations, they're not gonna willing or looking to go to college as much as our generation were, because they are, this generation, as I see it, is the generation that are making money the easier way, because for us it costs us a lot to get where they are now. And we're seeing for the first time ever uh, people, millionaires and billionaires in the 20s, in the 30s, that, I mean, in my generation that didn't happen, or rarely happen. So how did you guys see this? Because it's not only go and vote and participate. I mean, it's everything that we're seeing. And if we don't have access to educate these people, how did they're just gonna consume what? I mean, the social media, the chat GPT, what are they gonna consume? So I mean, what we're seeing now is, I think, is just the beginning of a huge and biggest challenge. How do you guys see that? Let's start with Joel.
Uh, First of all, Dr. Wolf, I loved everything you just said. So I appreciate that. But um, your question was, do you think that there's going to be a decline in uh, college
Attending,
students?
yeah, like
Yeah,
looking
college
to get a
attendance.
college, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. For sure. I think you know there's there's been a void that's missing with a lot of trades, whether it's plumbers, police officers. On city council, some of the things that we're trying to figure out is how do we hire and attain more police officers, because all across this nation, there's been a huge shortage with police officers. There's been a lot of shortage with welders and other trades that are very important that we still need to be able to run this country. So I think you know, no doubt that college tuition is or not college tuition, college attendance is going to go down. Um, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because I don't believe, like for example, um, I think one of the things that may be an issue with traditional public schools is that they have really pushed a lot that saying if you don't go to college, you're just going to be a bum for the rest of your life, essentially. That's not necessarily the case. I think one of the things we need to be able to be able to highlight is, I for me, I am as excited for my friend who just graduated summa cum laude from A&M and is going to med school as I am of my friend who just got his certification of and becoming a welder and starting a family and doing all that. I am equally as proud of as both of them. But right now, the public education system is not right, and so they're putting this narrative that because you don't go to college, you're going to fail. Um, and then another aspect of it is it's a lot easier to be able to attain information, right? We have a wealth of information. The world is at our fingertips. We can be able to search things up. For example, I was a few weeks ago. I'm the cheapest son of a gun you'll probably ever meet, and so I refuse. If I can find a way to do something my own, I'm going to do it. And so I had to change my brakes, and I didn't know how to change my brakes, and my dad was busy, and so I just Googled it on found it on YouTube, and I changed the brakes of my truck. And so I was able to be able to do that on my own, and to be able, instead of going somewhere else and paying someone to do it, I was able to do that. And now that I know that, I'm sure there's probably some certification process of becoming a mechanic. I'm not entirely sure, but I could also probably charge other people to change their brakes as well. And so there's an entrepreneurial mindset of now that people are being able to be able to make it on their own. I have a friend of mine who, just personally, I'm not a big fan of crypto. I think there's a lot of unanswered things about cryptocurrency, but he's done pretty well at investing in crypto, and he started off very small, and he doesn't even have a college degree. And so there's a lot of avenues and ways for people to be successful now than I think there were before. And so I think what we have to do is be able to encourage innovation through the young generation, and to be able to encourage people to do what you think is best for you, right? That you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be a lawyer, right? You do what you think is best for you and your future family, and we will be proud of you no matter what, right? Now, we should not encourage people to be lazy bums and leech off the government at
Yeah,
all,
of
right? We
course
should
not.
that is a huge problem as well. But we can encourage people to be productive members of society and be able to give back to their community, and really be able to live the American dream, have a family, and be able to pay for that.
So now I'm gonna switch the question to Professor. So now you think that the educational institutions need to change, need to adjust to the upcoming generations, need to reevaluate their classes, their system, everything, because what we were learning 20, 30, 40 years ago, it's not gonna work now.
100%. We know that it's been talked about in universities that there's actually going to be a decline in the number of students that we have coming in just due to the demographics, the number of babies that were born for this generation. It's going to decline. And so we know there's a bubble coming in about 5 years, they think, actually. And so we're going to have to adjust. And they think that it's a bunch of universities are going to close for that reason, and that's okay. I mean, exactly as Joel was saying, you don't necessarily become an educated person at a lot of these universities now. I mean, it's a big party place, and it's a big indoctrination place for a lot of these places. And so uh, we do need to, at universities, uh, you know, actually get back into real education, and also the universities that will be fine will be our University of St. Thomas. We're trying to be a distinctive Catholic liberal arts university. That's our comparative advantage, to use an economics term. And so universities that don't have some kind of comparative advantage will suffer, but the ones who do will be fine, I think, just to use economics terms. But what Joel said about fixing cars using YouTube, I mean, there's nothing more satisfying than that, and he's exactly right. And also you know that a lot of these types of jobs not requiring college degree are going to be very much in demand, and especially in Texas too. I mean, I love one of my favorite TV shows, to speak positively about TV for a second, was Friday Night Lights, the old Texas football show. But the problem with that show, I always thought, was that the ticket to success was always seen as, that you go to college, you leave Dillon, Texas, you get out of the small town. But that's not necessarily I thought that was also always a little bit of a not true, that you can live a very good life without having to get out of town and go to college someplace. That's not necessarily the ticket to success always. So good points.
Okay, so a call
Uh,
to action. What about to? Yeah, you can add. You want to add
Uh,
something?
well, yeah, I just want to add something to what Dr. Wolf said about Friday Night Lights, right? You know, I, there's this narrative, like, you know, the American dream is not this one size fits all thing. I think it's individualized, right? It's your American dream, right, Andrea? Like, you are living your American dream right now. Dr. Wolf is living his American dream. I'm living my American dream, and our dreams are all different, right? And so we have to be able to be able to tell these people in the young generation that it's their dream, it's their American dream. Don't be forced into this mold that this liberal agenda is trying to put you in. Unleash a lot of your mind. Be a free thinker. Don't be beholden to what you see on social media or these the quote unquote establishment in the system, whatever it may be able to live your American dream, be a free thinker, and be a productive member of your community and this society.
So, call to action for both of you. What it will be the message, not only for this generation, but of course the parents, because we have a big responsibility with them, and they're going this direction or this direction also because of us. So, what will be the call to action? And let's start it with Professor.
Well, with parents, they imitate the kids imitate the parents, of course. So, uh, call to action, I would say, with parents bringing up new generation. I mean, definitely consider what's going on with the school choice movement right now, and how important that is in terms of putting your kids into good schools. And the more that we can enable that to confirm what the law has always said, in loco parentis, teachers are in the place of the parents, and the parents are the primary educators of their kids. Uh, they gotta Parents have got to take that seriously.
Y'all.
I agree with everything Dr. Wolf just said. In my professional life, in my full time job, one of the things that we're really focusing on is school choice and getting school choice passed here in Texas, because it's a necessity. We have to be able to allow parents to choose which education is best for their child, right? No matter their income or their zip code. So we have to be able to encourage that. We have to be able to encourage free thinkers. I think for parents, what they need to do is is to not be afraid to have tough conversations. I've seen a lot, and especially in some of my constituency that I see in Alvin. A lot of people know that I'm a pretty strong conservative, and so they reach out to me when they say, "Oh, my kid is thinking it, painting, dyeing his hair blue and painting his nails or whatever it may be." And so I tell them, like, you just got to be able to have that conversation with them. Tell them what you believe is right, and show them, what is wrong, how some of these values have really taken a turn all over history, right? Because the liberal socialist agenda has never worked anywhere else in this country, and history always repeats itself, right? And so we have actual real life experience all throughout history where we've seen that this kind of stuff has never ever worked, and it's definitely not going to work in America. And then what we also have to do is to be able to really be able to empower every single voice and find their voice and be able to magnify that voice. Um, and how we do that is just having those conversations, and being able to have those frank and blunt conversations, and having that challenge culture.
So I think the call to action here is go back to basics and is education. Pretty much
Yeah.
is we need to keep and working hard on keep educating our community and our society. I think that's the only way. Well,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you so much for both of you for your time and share this important message and important thoughts with us. And so let's keep it up because we cannot give up. We just need to keep doing this because it's not only our future but the future of our kids and our family and our country that the country that we live in, the country that we love.
Yeah.
Thank you
Amen.
so much for both of you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much. Appreciate y'all.
And thank you so much for watching us today. Please go to our webpage, TexasLatinoConservatives.com, TexasLatinoConservatives.com. We offer you guys information about different things, about resources, and also get involved with us, become a member, and stay tuned for our Leadership Latino class that is going to be in August. And also, if you want to run for office and if you think that you have that encourage to represent your community, so please reach out to us. We also help young people, Latino people, or anybody that has conservative values and want to run for office. So thank you so much for being with us. I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Nos vemos el próximo miércoles. Chao, chao.